You stop running. That's it. That's the whole decision. 1 second your legs are moving, carrying you across sunburned ground you've been crossing for 3 hours straight, and the next second, they just don't. You bend forward, hands on your knees, chest heaving, and up ahead, the animal you've been chasing since sunrise keeps moving. It doesn't stop. It doesn't look back. Within a few seconds, it's gone. So what actually happens now? First, nothing. That's the strange part. No dramatic moment, no crash, no collapse, just silence and your own breathing, and a stretch of empty land where a kudu used to be. You spent 3 hours reading its tracks, matching your pace to its fear, closing the gap kilometer by kilometer, and now none of that exists anymore. The trail is still there in the dirt. The animal at the end of it isn't. You turn around. That's what happens next. You start the long walk back, alone with nothing. No meat slung over your shoulder, no reason to walk fast anymore, because there's nowhere urgent left to be. The sun that was chasing you all morning is now just something to survive on the way home. And back at camp, people are waiting. That's the part that actually stings. Not the empty hands, the faces when you arrive with them empty. Your children run toward you first, the way they always do, eyes going straight to your shoulders, looking for the shape of meat that isn't there. You watch that hope drop out of them in real time. Nobody says anything cruel. Nobody has to. Your partner looks at you for 1 second longer than usual, then turns back to whatever's left in camp to stretch across everyone's bowl tonight. If you're lucky, someone else's hunt came through, and you eat anyway, off another man's effort, while he watches you eat it. That's its own quiet weight to carry. If nobody's hunt came through, the whole camp goes to sleep a little hungrier because of a decision you made alone, 3 hours out, in a moment no one else even witnessed. Either way, there's a ledger being kept, even if no one speaks it aloud. Who provided, who didn't. Tomorrow you'll be expected to try again, spear in hand, past the exact spot where you turned back today. That's what giving up mid-hunt actually costs. Not just calories burned for nothing, a day gone, a body exhausted for no return, a specific kind of shame that doesn't need anyone to say a single word about it because it's sitting right there in your children's faces and in the food you didn't bring home. Here's what should bother you, though. Go back to the exact second you stopped running. Your legs weren't broken. Your heart wasn't failing. By every measurable standard, your body could have kept moving. So why did it feel like it couldn't? For most of the 20th century, the answer scientists gave was simple. Muscles run out of fuel, fail mechanically, and once that happens, the body simply can't continue. Clean, physical, final. Except that story has a hole in it, and a researcher named Tim Noakes at the University of Cape Town found it by watching exhausted runners do something that shouldn't be possible. Athletes who look completely spent, barely able to continue, would suddenly speed up the moment the finish line came into view. If their muscles had truly failed, that kind of burst shouldn't exist. You can't sprint on an empty tank. So Noakes proposed something that would have explained exactly what happened to you out there. He called it the central governor. The theory says your brain, not your muscles, decides when you stop, and it decides early on purpose. Long before your body reaches genuine physical failure, your brain quietly rations out effort to protect you from real catastrophic breakdown. What you feel as total exhaustion isn't your body hitting a wall. Noakes called it an emotion, a protective lie delivered by your own brain, timed to arrive well before the actual danger point. Which means, back on that plane, the kudu you were chasing wasn't the only one still capable of running. You were too. Your brain simply told you otherwise, a little too soon. This idea has a longer history than Noakes. Almost a century earlier, a physiologist named Archibald Hill floated something similar, suggesting the brain might deliberately protect the body from real damage during extreme effort. Nobody believed him at the time. There wasn't enough evidence yet. It took decades and a new generation of researchers to circle back and prove he might have been onto something. There's a third piece to this that matters just as much. A researcher named Louis Liebenberg spent years walking alongside hunters in the Kalahari, documenting these exact chases in detail. What he found wasn't a simple test of endurance. It was a constant, active negotiation, playing out the entire time your feet were moving. A hunter reads the spacing between prints to guess whether the animal is still running at full strength or starting to labor. A deeper, closer together set of tracks means the legs beneath them are getting heavy. A trail that suddenly veers towards shade instead of open ground means the animal is already fighting its own version of the heat you're fighting. None of that shows up as a clean signal. It has to be pieced together, kilometer after kilometer, by someone whose legs are already screaming at him to stop. That's exactly the information you had out there today and didn't fully trust. The hunters who succeeded most often weren't always the strongest. They were the ones who could read those small, quiet signs in the dirt and weigh them against their own exhaustion instead of just listening to whichever voice was loudest. Your own body was shouting. The tracks in front of you may have been telling a different, quieter story. That distinction is the entire story. Somewhere out on that plain, 10 more minutes might have changed everything. The animal, exhausted from hours in the heat, might have finally slowed enough for the gap to close. You'll never know because the decision got made for you, quietly, by a brain that mistook caution for a wall that was never actually there. And that decision is the whole difference between walking back into camp with meat on your shoulder and walking back into it with nothing but the story of how close you got. Nobody at camp will ever know how close. They'll only know you stopped running. And for a long time, you assumed that moment was simply your body giving out. It wasn't. It was your brain speaking a little too soon and you believing it completely. The same way every exhausted hunter before you had, and everyone after you would too, until generations later, someone finally stopped to ask why.